The cave did not open with thunder. It opened with an old mouth remembering how to speak. And inside it, Daz and Pooky were about to learn what the family forgot, what the Goblin King stole, and why oatmeal lace cookies should never, ever contain dragonsbane. Welcome back, darlings. This is Chapter 12 of Those Damn Brownies, Mother's Little Killers. The home remembers what the family forgets. If you want to start from the beginning and follow the whole adventure with Snooker, Weewee, Biscuit, Daz, and Pooky, begin with Chapter 1, Biscuit's Moonlit Hunt. You'll find the Chapter 1 link and the Season 2 hub in the show notes. And if you know someone who loves cozy fantasy with bite, family secrets, dragon mothers, memory magic, tiny chaotic creatures, emotional support dachshunds, and recipes that absolutely should not be weaponized by goblin propaganda, send this episode their way. This one goes deep into grief, memory, manipulation, and the kind of family truth that hurts before it heals. So get something warm to drink, keep your snacks unpoisoned, and make sure your dachshund knows where you are. Previously, on Those Damn Brownies, Daz, Pooky, Biscuit, Snooker, and Weewee crossed into the magical world in search of Hope, the missing sister, whose trail keeps tangling itself through old stories, dangerous woods, and worse family history. At Bubby Vama's house, the party found objects from a forgotten past. A shawl, a cloak, an old cookie tin, and Hope's carved teething ring. At the night market, Madame Talmai gave Daz a faded baby doll and warned them that every ending begins somewhere. And now, with the night market folding itself away behind them, the baby doll points toward Yontiff's cave, a place that Brownies cannot enter unless the family remembers enough to welcome them in. Chapter 12, Mother's Little Killers. The home remembers what the family forgets, by Glory Fink. The road away from the night market was not a road so much as it was a rumor that had learned to behave itself. Behind Daz, Pooky, Biscuit, Snooker, and Weewee, the night market folded itself away lantern by lantern, stall by stall, shadow by shadow. First, the ribbon booth tucked itself into a crack in the air. Then the fried dough cart yawned, turned its own wheels backward, and vanished into the smell of hot sugar. The stall selling bottled arguments corked itself. The basket of moon bruises pulled down its own gingham cloth. Madame Talmai's tent did not fold at all. It simply stopped admitting it had ever been there. Only the baby doll remained. Daz carried it carefully in both arms, one hand under its cloth body, the other supporting its head as though it were a living infant and not a faded doll with stitched eyes and one arm forever pointing toward trouble. The doll pointed down the narrow path ahead, or perhaps the path became narrow because the doll pointed. It is difficult to say with old magic, and unwise to argue with directions issued by something that has no mouth, and yet has made itself perfectly clear. The air beyond the market smelled colder than the market had, less like hot oil, cardamom, candle wax, copper coins, and secrets shouted over music. More like damp stone, smoke, old milk, grass, rain, and something sharp beneath the sweetness. Biscuit stopped every 7 steps to sniff. She sniffed the ground. She sniffed the doll. She sniffed Daz's shawl. She sniffed Pooky's bag where the old cookie tin from Bubby Vama's house sat wrapped in cloth. And then she huffed, shook her ears, and pulled at her leash with the full conviction of a dog who understood that the plot was ahead and behaving badly. Pooky watched Daz with the worried sideways look of a brother who was trying not to be worried in a way that made everyone else much more worried. "You're holding it like you've done this before," Pooky said. Daz looked down at the doll in her arms. Her fingers had curved naturally around its soft body. The doll's faded head rested against the inside of her wrist. She even tucked a little blanket around it when the wind came up. "I know," Daz replied. "Do you remember doing it?" "No." "That's what I was afraid of." Snooker and Weewee were sitting in their usual traveling places, Snooker in Pooky's shirt pocket and Weewee in Daz's. Neither brownie had said anything since leaving Madame Tallmy's stall. This was a problem. Snooker could be silent when planning, flattering, hiding crumbs, or preparing to narrate someone into emotional ruin. Weewee could be silent when asleep, chewing, hiding behind Biscuit, or attempting not to reveal a secret that had already climbed into their mouth and began waving. But both of them silent at once meant the world was thinking too hard. Daz glanced down at Weewee. Weewee looked up at her with enormous eyes and then looked away. Well, Daz said, because someone had to be brave enough to be normal for at least 3 more minutes, does anyone want the rest of the fried dough before it turns into pocket lint? That broke the spell a little. Pooky stopped walking, set Snooker carefully down on a flat stone, and took the paper packet of fried dough from his bag. It had been warm when they bought it. Now it was only gently warm, soft in the middle, crisp at the corners, and dusted with the kind of sugar that found every possible fold in fabric, and stayed there until the end of the days. A final civilized morsel before destiny becomes inhospitable, Snooker said, recovering just enough of himself to bow toward the food. That is the saddest thing anyone has ever said about fried dough, Daz replied. I've heard sadder, Weewee said. One time a man at the fair dropped his fried dough in a horse trough and shouted, "My supper!" With such despair I considered devoting my life to charity. Did you? Pooky asked. No, said Weewee. I stole the bit that landed on the dry side. Pooky tore the fried dough into pieces for Snooker, Weewee, and Biscuit. Daz took one whole fried dough piece. Snooker took his piece with great ceremony. Weewee took a piece with both hands and immediate commitment. Pooky handed a tiny piece to Biscuit, who sniffed it with suspicion, ate it, considered the moral implications, and then demanded a much larger piece. No, Daz said. This is not dinner. Biscuit stared at her. This is not even lunch. Biscuit stared harder. You are a very small dog. Biscuit's expression suggested that size was a social construct invented by cowards. Pooky sighed and broke off another piece. Here, mighty hound, for courage. Biscuit ate it, licked Pooky's fingers clean, sniffed the packet to verify no further tribute was being withheld, and then tugged toward the path again. Right, Daz said, brushing sugar from her skirt. Back to doom. Doom with powdered sugar, Weewee said. A respectable doom, at least. But once they started walking again, no one laughed. The road narrowed, the trees leaned in, the roots rose out of the dirt in long, knuckled loops as if the earth had clasped its hands and begun to pray. The baby doll's arm pointed steadily onward. No matter how the path curved, no matter where the moonlight broke through the branches, no matter how many times the road seemed to double back on itself, that small stitched arm pointed forward. Soon the path no longer led upward. It led in circles, around stones marked by old scorch, beneath branches that had once burned but kept growing anyway, past a row of mushrooms that turned their caps away as the party passed. Pooky slowed. What is it? Daz asked. He sniffed the air. Daz knew that look. It was the look Pooky got when memory had brushed past him but refused to be introduced. Oatmeal cookies, he said. Snooker closed his eyes. Weewee made a very small sound. Daz looked ahead. The baby doll pointed at an ordinary hillside. It was not grand. It was not imposing. It had no skulls, no warning signs, no singing bones, no convenient lightning illuminating a jagged entrance. It was a mossy slope, half covered in ivy and roots, the sort of hill a person might pass in the woods without any particular feeling at all, unless the person was a dachshund. Biscuit growled. The hillside exhaled. A scene opened, not with thunder, not with a roar. It opened like an old mouth remembering how to speak. Roots pulled back, ivy loosened, stone shifted just enough to reveal the dark curve of an entrance. The cave mouth breathed out cold air that smelled of soot, damp rock, old flour, and something sweet gone sorrowful. Around the entrance were signs of a life too large and too intimate to be only monstrous. Scorched stone, melted mineral streaks like glass, enormous claw marks softened by moss, a broken iron pot big enough to bathe in, a flat stone near the entrance worn smooth at the center as though it had once served as a doorstep, and just inside the cave mouth, nearly hidden under lichen, were 3 small handprints pressed into old paint. Daz saw them and went still. Her stomach turned over. The handprints were faded nearly to nothing. One slightly larger, one smaller and smudged as though the child who made it had wiggled. One tiny round palm print pressed too low, as if someone had held a baby's hand and helped. Daz lifted her own hand without meaning to. Pooky's bag clicked. The old cookie tin inside clicked again. Biscuit whined and pressed against Daz's ankle. "Please set us down," Snooker said. His voice was not theatrical now. Pooky looked down at him. "What?" "Set us down, my lord." Daz cupped her hand to help Weewee climb from her pocket. Pooky did the same for Snooker. The 2 brownies stood on the mossy stone outside the cave mouth, looking smaller than usual. Weewee swallowed. Then they took 1 step backward. "I regret to announce," Weewee said, voice trembling only a little, "that my feet have voted against this cave." Pooky frowned. "Are you afraid of dragons?" Weewee stared at him. "My lord, I am afraid of plenty of things. Hawks, owls, large buckets, doors that close too quickly, babies with jam hands, some kinds of cheese if left unaccounted for. But this is not a fear of dragons matter." Snooker nodded. "This is Yontiff's cave," he said. "An old hearth law is older than courage." Daz looked from Snooker to the cave. "What does that mean?" Snooker clasped his hands behind his back. "It means this is not merely a cave. This is a mother place, a dragon place, a family place. Brownies cannot cross into such places uninvited." "Then come in," Daz said at once. And nothing happened. The cave remained cold and open. The brownies remained outside. Daz's face tightened. "I said come in." Snooker's eyes filled with sorrow. "My lady, you gave us permission to join ye. That is not the same as welcome." Pooky's jaw clenched. "That sounds like the sort of rule made up by people who enjoy being inconvenient at the worst possible time." "Aye," Snooker said. "Most rules are." Weewee hugged themselves, staring into the cave. "This place knows the difference." Daz looked down at the baby doll. Its stitched arm pointed inside. Biscuit planted herself between Daz and the cave entrance with all 4 paws firm and her ears pricked forward. She looked very much like she would file a complaint with the management of Destiny, if only someone would provide a form and a working pen. Pooky took 1 step forward toward the cave and stopped. The cold breathing out of it touched his face. Shadows gathered near his boots. Snooker said quietly, "Remember what Madame Talmai told us?" Daz looked back. "When the cave remembers," Snooker said, "do not interrupt it." No one asked how a cave could remember. By then they all knew better. Daz adjusted the shawl around her shoulders. Pooky rested 1 hand on the strap of his bag. Biscuit gave a low, unhappy hoof and moved ahead of them. Daz and Pooky entered Yontiff's cave. The first chamber looked exactly like a dragon's lair should look if the person describing dragon's lairs had never had to sweep one. The ceiling arched high into darkness. Soot blackened the stone above them. Old claw marks scored the walls. Farther in, something gold glinted under dust. The floor dipped into an enormous sleeping hollow, lined with ash and mineral glass. Bones might have suited the picture, but there were none. If Yontiff had ever eaten anyone in that cave, she had at least been tidy enough not to leave props. "This is," Pooky began. And then the cave shifted. Not physically, not exactly. The eye learned to look differently. The monstrous hollow became a sleeping place. The treasure glints became old spoons, bent cups, cracked bowls, bits of polished stone, beads, buttons, and things kept because someone small had once handed them to someone large with pride. The blackened ceiling became a kitchen ceiling. The claw marks became ware. The enormous hearth at the far end of the chamber was not a pit of destruction. It was a hearth. Its stone mouth was wide enough for a dragon's fire and shaped by years of use. Hooks for drying herbs hung above it. Huge jars stood in a row along a shelf carved into the wall. A table scarred by claws and time stood nearby. Its legs were thick as tree trunks, worn smooth at the base where small feet had kicked them. Daz took a step forward. She knew where the flour had been kept. The knowledge arrived without permission. Third jar from the left, heavy lid, a crack in the side near the bottom where someone had dropped a stone cup and cried until Yontiff said cracks only proved something had been used. Daz pressed her hand to her mouth. Pooky turned toward the shelves. Oats, he said. His face had gone flat. His voice had gone flat. What? That jar, he pointed. That's where she kept the oats. Neither of them asked how he knew. Biscuit walked toward the hearth and stopped. There was a cold place in front of it. Not ordinary cold. Not cave cold. A wrongness in the floor. Biscuit lowered her nose, sniffed once, and whimpered. The cave waited. Then the ash stirred. The air thickened. The dark walls softened. And the cave began to remember. Once upon a time, there was a princess named Giselle and a prince named Misha. That was the story they'd been given. That was the story Snooker had tried to tell before sleep swallowed the ending. Giselle had been stolen by a dragon. Misha had come to rescue her. The dragon's name was Yontiff. Everyone knew dragons stole children. Everyone knew dragons ate sheep and goats, and occasionally people if the mood took them, and the people were slow enough. Everyone knew the king and queen must have been worried sick. Everyone knew heroes returned home. Everyone knew mothers waited at castles. The memory unfolded inside the cave like cloth shaken from a chest. Daz saw herself as Giselle, younger and smaller, wearing a dress that had once been fine and now patched at the hem. Her hair was tied back with a ribbon. She stood near the table, scrubbing at a bowl much too large for her hands. Pooky saw himself as Misha, narrow-faced and fierce, hiding behind a stack of baskets with a knife clutched in one hand. "They're waiting for us," Memory Misha whispered. "I know," Memory Giselle said. "Mother and father must be frantic." "Yes." "Then why are you cleaning?" Memory Giselle scowled at him. "Because the dragon notices less when I clean." Present-day Daz flinched. Pooky looked at her, but her eyes were fixed on the memory. Memory Misha crept closer. "Does she hurt you?" "No." "Does she lock you in?" "No." "Does she threaten you?" Memory Giselle hesitated. The hesitation belonged to the false story. It had been placed there like a stain. "She's a dragon," Memory Giselle said. "She does not have to threaten." Smoke moved through the cave. Something enormous shifted beyond the next chamber. Memory Misha lifted his knife. Present-day Pooky took one instinctive step forward, as if he could protect his younger self from what he had not understood. Yontiff entered. At first, she was every dragon a child had ever been told to fear. Huge shadow, smoke, heat, claws, a head broad as a carriage, eyes like banked coals, teeth too large for forgiveness. Memory Giselle stiffened. Memory Misha hid. Present-day Daz felt herself shrink inside her own body. Then Yontiff spoke. "Giselle, my kindler, if you scrub that bowl any harder, you'll wear a hole through it, and then we shall have stew on the floor, and a bowl with ambitions beyond its station." Memory Giselle looked down. "It's still sticky." "Of course it is sticky. You put honey in it, and then wandered off to argue with the bread dough." "I did not argue." "You told it to rise or face consequences." "It was being stubborn." Yontiff made a sound like rocks warming in the sun. It took present-day Daz a moment to realize the dragon was laughing. "And Misha," Yontiff said without turning her head, "if you insist on hiding by the cold shelf, at least take the blanket from the peg You always catch a chill there and then pretend your sniffles are a military strategy. Memory Misha froze. Present-day Pooky closed his eyes. I never sniffle, Memory Misha muttered. Yontiff lowered her enormous head until one fiery eye peered around the baskets. My darling boy, you sniffed with the full conviction of a tragic violin. Memory Giselle laughed, and that sound broke something open. Present-day Daz remembered that laugh in her own mouth. Not the facts around it. Not the date, not the whole shape of the day, only the feeling. Warmth, flower on her sleeve, Pooky sulking because he had been caught, Yontiff pretending not to notice that Misha's knife was wooden because she had replaced the real one 3 days earlier and he had not yet realized. No, Daz whispered. The cave remembered harder. The memory shifted to the kitchen. Yontiff's hearth burned bright enough to turn the stone walls gold. The table had been cleared, bowls waited, oats, brown sugar, cinnamon, butter in a pan near the heat. Memory Giselle stood on a stool. Memory Misha leaned on the table, trying to look uninterested and failing. Yontiff curled around the hearth, her tail tucked neatly against the wall so no one would trip over it, because even dragons who can level cities may learn household manners if they have raised children. Now, Yontiff said, there are many cookies in this world, and a great many of them are lies. Memory Giselle giggled, and Memory Misha asked, how can a cookie be a lie? Dry, Yontiff said at once. Dry cookies are lies. Pretty cookies that taste like paper are lies. Cookies that promise spice and deliver dust are lies. Cookies without enough butter are accusations. Present-day Pooky made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost pain. Yontiff nudged a bowl toward the children with one careful claw. These are honest cookies. Oats, brown sugar, butter, cinnamon, a little honey if the day has been especially rude. Cinnamon if you want the tongue to chase the sweetness and wonder where it went. Memory Giselle poured oats into the bowl. Memory Misha reached for the brown sugar. Yontiff said, hands. Misha froze. Clean hands. He sighed with the burden of a prince oppressed by hygiene. Memory Giselle smirked. Do not look so pleased, little star, Yontiff said. You too. The children washed their hands. The memory warmed. Butter melted, brown sugar clumped and softened. Cinnamon dusted the air with sweetness. The oats made a dry, papery sound as Giselle stirred them. Yontiff explained that cookie dough did not have to look elegant to become delicious. Some things look like a mess until heat tells the truth, Yontiff said. Memory Giselle tucked that away. Present-day Daz felt herself tuck it away. Yontiff showed them how to spoon the dough onto the pan. Farther apart, she said. Memory Misha frowned. They look lonely. They spread, Yontiff said. Give them room, Kindler. Sweet things cannot fully become themselves when crowded. Memory Giselle laughed again. Memory Misha stole a crisp edge from the cooling rack. Yontiff pretended not to see. Present-day Pooky tasted it, not with his mouth, with his memory. Crisp oats, melted sugar, browned butter, a little cinnamon, the fragile crackle at the edge, heat on his fingertips because he never waited long enough. The old cookie tin in his bag clicked open by itself. Daz and Pooky turned. Inside were crumbs from Bubby Vama's house, or perhaps no crumbs at all, and only the smell of what had once been kept there. The cave grew colder. A whisper crawled through the memory. Yontiff stole you. The hearth flickered. Memory Giselle looked up, but Yontiff did not seem to hear it. Yontiff only pretends kindness. Memory Misha's hand closed around the edge of the table. Dragons fatten children before eating them. Daz shook her head. Stop. The king and queen are waiting. Pooky's jaw tightened. The kingdom will honor you. No, he said. The only way home is to kill the dragon. The memory shifted. Butter melted again. Oats waited again. Brown sugar, cinnamon, anise. And now there was another pouch on the table. A small gray pouch tied with black thread. Memory Misha held it. Present-day Pooky looked at his own hands as if expecting to find poison there. No, he said again. Memory Giselle whispered, Are you sure? Memory Misha's eyes were bright with terror and resolve and a child's terrible willingness to believe adults who tell them murder is duty. It's the only way, he said. The only way to kill a fire dragon is with cold. Where did you get it? The man in the green cloak said it would work. What man? I don't remember. Memory Giselle stared at the pouch. A whisper moved through her hair. Yontiff stole you. Memory Giselle's face hardened. She took us, she said. Present-day Daz pressed both hands to her stomach. She took us, Memory Giselle repeated, because sometimes if a child repeats a lie often enough, it becomes the door they walk through to survive what comes next. They made the cookies. Oats, brown sugar, butter, cinnamon, anise, dragonsbane. The dough smelled sweet, and then wrong, and then sweet again. Memory Giselle stirred until every flake was coated. Memory Misha watched the doorway. Their hands shook. The cave walls pulsed with cold. In the present, Biscuit began digging at the ash near the hearth. Daz barely noticed at first. She could not look away from the memory of her own small hands shaping poison into teaspoonfuls. But Biscuit dug with purpose. Claws scraping stone and ash, she sneezed once, snorted, and kept working. Biscuit, Pooky said hoarsely. Biscuit ignored him. She dug until the ash gave up something blackened and flat. A scrap of something. A card. Daz knelt beside her. The card was enormous for a recipe card, made of thick, pale material edged in scorch marks. Most of the writing had been burned away, but some lines remained, written large enough for a dragon's eye and careful enough for children to follow. Oats, brown sugar, butter, cinnamon, give them room. At the bottom, in a cramped note written sideways, were 3 lines. Daz likes the edges crisp. Pooky steals them hot. Hope prefers licking the spoon. Daz made a sound so small the cave almost swallowed it. Hope's teething ring warmed. The baby doll twitched in Daz's arm. The old cookie tin snapped fully open. The cave assembled the evidence. No, Daz said. Pooky looked into the memory. Did we? The cave did not answer. It remembered. Memory Giselle and Memory Misha carried the plate. The cookies were beautiful. Thin, golden, lacy at the edges, crisp enough to shatter, sweet enough to hide murder for exactly 1 bite. Yontiff lifted her head when they entered. Her eyes softened. Well, well, she said. My stars have been busy. Memory Giselle held up the plate. We made you cookies, she said. Memory Misha stood beside her. His shoulders were square. His face was pale. For you, he said. Yontiff looked at the plate. For one terrible moment, present-day Daz thought she knew. Surely she knew. Surely a dragon who had lived long enough to make a home out of stone and fire, who could smell fear under bravery and lies under courtesy, would know poison when it came to her on a plate held by shaking hands. Yontiff lowered her head. She sniffed. The cave held its breath. Yontiff looked at the children, not at the cookies, at the children. And then she smiled. My clever darlings, she said. She ate one, and then another. Memory Giselle's fingers twisted in her skirt. Memory Misha watched with a hero's face and a frightened child's eyes. Yontiff chewed. She swallowed. They are excellent, she said. A bit much anise, perhaps, but I have always trusted enthusiasm more than restraint. The cold began. At first it was only steam. Yontiff breathed out, and instead of smoke, a white cloud drifted from her nostrils. She blinked. The hearth fire bent low. Memory Giselle stepped back. Memory Misha grabbed her hand. Yontiff tried to lift one wing, and it trembled. Frost feathered along her nostrils. A thin white line crawled across one golden claw. What a strange thing, Yontiff said softly. Why is the cave so cold? Memory Misha whispered, It's working. The words struck present-day Pooky like a blade. He staggered. Biscuit barked once, "Arr!" sharp and furious, as if she could still stop it. Yontiff tried to breathe fire, only mist came out. The hearth guttered. The golden light in the cave thinned to gray. Snow crystals formed along the stones of the dragon's hearth. Yontiff's wings curled around her body. She lowered herself to the floor, enormous and trembling, her claws scraping stone. Memory Giselle stared. Memory Misha stared. Their faces changed. The story in their heads said victory should feel bright. It did not. It felt like the sun had gone out underground. Yontiff looked at them, and there it was. Not rage, not betrayal first. Love. Love so complete and immediate and terrible that it made no room for the lie. "Oh," Yontiff whispered. Frost took the smoke from her mouth. "Oh, my Kindler, my poor stolen stars." Memory Giselle began to cry. Memory Misha shook his head as if he could shake the sound away. "What did he take from you?" Yontiff asked. No one answered. Memory Giselle whispered, "You stole us." Yontiff's eyes closed. When they opened again, the fire in them had dimmed, but the love had not. "No," she said. "No, my little lights." The cave was freezing now. Present-day Daz's shawl warmed around her shoulders, but not enough. Pooky's shadows gathered thickly, but even they seemed chilled, as if the darkness itself had drawn near to mourn and found no shelter from what had happened. Yontiff tried once more to breathe fire. A single spark escaped. It drifted across the cave and landed at the feet of the children who had killed her. It did not burn them. It warmed them. Yontiff died of impossible cold. And in the silence after, young Giselle and Misha stood in the cave of the dragon they believed had stolen them, holding an empty plate and wearing the faces of heroes who had no idea why victory felt like grief. The memory did not stop. That was the cruelty of caves. Stories told by people can pause. Caves remember all the way through. Young Giselle and Misha left the cave. They walked out into morning, or what had been morning, or what the false story needed morning to be. At the cave mouth, Memory Giselle looked back once. The cave called to her, not in words, in warmth, in flower, in the smell of oats and smoke and a mother's breath. She turned away. Memory Misha took her hand. "We have to go home," he said. The shadows behind them shifted. The goblin magic crawled over their memories like green mold over bread. The cave showed what they had not seen. It showed the lie being laid down in them long before the cookies. It showed whispers in corridors, a man in a green cloak bending low, a gray pouch pressed into a boy's palm, a kind voice saying brave children must do hard things, a courtly laugh that belonged to no friend. The king and queen waiting, the kingdom waiting. Yontiff stole you. Yontiff stole you. Yontiff stole you. Then the cave showed hope. She was small, too small to stop anything, too small to explain, too small to be believed by people who had already let the lie crawl inside them and make a nest. But she had not forgotten it all the way. She sat near the cave mouth in someone's arms, reaching toward Yontiff's hearth with both hands. She cried, not hungry crying, not tired crying, grief crying. "No," Daz whispered. Hope knew. Pooky's voice was a ruin. She knew. The memory shifted again. Young Giselle and Misha returned to the kingdom, and no one greeted them as heroes. No one knew why they had come. No one remembered enough to be grateful or horrified. The forgetting had not begun after the dragon died. The forgetting had prepared the murder. Snuffleglump had stolen their mother from their own memories first. He turned love into captivity. He turned murder into heroism. He turned children into weapons. Outside the cave, Snooker and Weewee heard the roaring. They heard a child crying. They heard Daz say no. They heard Biscuit bark once, sharp as a thrown stone. Arf! Then they heard Pooky make a sound like something old and load-bearing had cracked inside him. Weewee had both hands balled into fists. I'm going in! Snooker caught them by the cloak. No! Weewee turned on him with tears bright in their eyes. They are in there! They are hurting! Then let me go, you overpolished soap spoon! Snooker did not let go. We cannot enter without welcome, he said. I do not care! The cave does! Weewee looked past him into the dark. I do not like being brave out here! I would rather be stupid in there! Snooker's face crumpled just enough to show the grief under the rules. So would I, he said. Inside the cave, the memory ended. Daz was on the floor without remembering how she had gotten there. Pooky sat beside her, one hand pressed flat against the cold stone, the other clenched around nothing. Biscuit was in Daz's lap, also guarding Pooky, also growling at the cave, also licking Daz's wrist, also trying to climb high enough to lick Pooky's chin. Biscuit believed in performing all necessary tasks, regardless of the unreasonable limits imposed by having only one small dachshund body. Daz stared at the cave mouth. Snooker and Weewee were still outside, and now she understood why. Not with her mind, with her bones. This was Yontiff's cave. This was their home. This was their mother's house. Daz tried to speak. Her voice broke before it became sound. Pooky reached for her hand. His own was shaking. Snooker, Daz said at last. Weewee? The brownies looked in. The cave listened. Daz swallowed. This was... She could not finish. Pooky did. This was our mother's house, he said. The words settled into the stone. The hearth, cold and dead a moment before, gave one low ember glow. And you are our friends, she said. Pooky lifted his head. Come in, he said. Be welcome in our mother's home. The cave opened around the invitation. Not wider, deeper. The air changed. Snooker and Weewee stepped across the threshold. Neither joked. Snooker removed his cap and held it against his chest. Weewee took off their little helmet and bowed so deeply their pale curls fell forward. Then Weewee whispered, Thank you for having us. Daz made a sound that might have been a laugh if the world had been kinder. Snooker and Weewee walked to them slowly. For once, the brownies looked their size. Not because they were smaller, but because grief makes scale honest. Snooker stood near Daz's knee, and Weewee stood near Pooky's hand. They did not try to fix it. There are things even brownies know not to mend too quickly. Biscuit climbed out of Daz's lap, licked Pooky's fingers, then turned around and climbed back into Daz's lap, because brief support is demanding, and Biscuit was nothing if not a professional. Daz touched the burnt recipe card. We made her cookies. Pooky's voice was almost too low to hear. She taught us how. We used her recipe. We killed her with it. No one contradicted him. That mattered. A quick absolution would have been easier. A quick absolution would have been cruel. Snooker folded his hands. My lord, my lady, you were children, a child formed enough for childhood to matter. Your memories had been stolen and poisoned before the cookies ever were. Daz looked at him. Her eyes were wet and bright and terrible. That does not make Yontiff less dead. Snooker bowed his head. No, my lady. Weewee stepped forward. Their face was blotchy from crying, and their chin trembled. Their voice, when it came, was plain and fierce. No, Weewee said. It does not make her less dead, but it makes the murderer someone else. Pooky looked at them. You were the tools, Weewee said, but not the hand that wielded the tools against Yontiff. The cave held the words. Daz closed her eyes. Pooky lowered his head. Biscuit sneezed because ash had gotten in her nose, and solemnity does not prevent nasal irritation. Somehow that helped. Not enough, but some. The hearth gave another ember glow. A soft scraping sound came from the stone wall beside it. Everyone turned. A narrow crack opened in the rock. From it slid two things. The first was the recipe card. Not the burnt scrap Biscuit had dug out, but the whole of it rested enough to read. It was large, thick, and written in Yontiff's hand, which had been surprisingly elegant for someone with claws the size of serving spoons. At the top it read, "Oatmeal lace cookies for children who say they are not hungry and then eat 12. Below that came the recipe, or enough of it. Oats, brown sugar, butter, cinnamon, anise if the day requires mystery, honey if the day has been rude, no crowding, let them spread, let them become what they are, and in the margins, Daz likes the edges crisp, Pooky steals them hot, Hope likes licking the spoon. Do not let Snuffleglump's men near the pantry." At the bottom, in darker ink, written as though added later, "If I do not return, remember, love is not a bargain." Daz pressed the card to her chest. The second object was smaller, a token, or perhaps a document, or perhaps a promise trying to survive as both. It was a flat piece of old gold-veined stone, thin as a book cover and marked with 3 seals, a dragon's claw, a royal crown, and a goblin sigil that had been scratched into the surface later, as if someone had tried to make vandalism look like law. Pooky picked it up. The moment his fingers closed around it, the shadows near the cave wall leaned closer. Words shimmered across the token and vanished before they could be read. Snooker drew in a breath. "What is it?" Daz asked. Snooker stared at the scratched goblin's sigil. "A record." "Of what?" "An oath, perhaps. A custody vow? A royal protection pledge?" Snooker's mouth tightened. "Or the place where one was altered." Weewee's eyes narrowed. "That mark is goblin work." Pooky's voice went low enough that the shadows listened. "Snuffleglump." The token warmed in his hand. The cave smelled suddenly of oats, smoke, and a mother's fire. Daz looked back toward the hearth. For a moment, only a moment, she thought she saw Yontiff there. Not dying, not poisoned, not cold. Only present in the way mothers are present in recipes, in old kitchens, in the remembered instruction to leave enough room on the pan. And then the ember glow faded. The baby doll's arm dropped. Everyone looked at it. For the first time since Madame Talmai had placed it in Daz's hands, the baby doll was no longer pointing. Hope's teething ring warmed against Daz's pocket. Biscuit, exhausted from professional emotional labor, turned 3 tight circles beside Pooky's leg and collapsed against his boot. Her eyes closed. Then one eye opened again because justice was unfinished and naps must sometimes be tactical. Snooker put his cap back on. "We know where the next story leads," he said. "To the kingdom," Daz said. "To the court," said Snooker. "To whoever signed this," Pooky said, holding up the token. Weewee's mouth twisted. "And whoever scratched goblin lies over dragon love." The cave was quiet. Outside, something like dawn pressed gently against the trees, though no one could be sure if it was morning or only the world giving them enough light to leave by. Daz held Yontiff's recipe card. Pooky held the token. The brownies stood with them inside their mother's house. Biscuit snored once softly against Pooky's boot. The dragon had not stolen them. The dragon had loved them. And somewhere, wearing a crown he had no right to keep, King Snuffleglump had built a kingdom out of the difference. "Now," Pooky said, his voice low enough that the shadows listened, "we find out who wrote this lie down." The old token warmed in his hand, and far away, something in the Forgotten Kingdom began to panic. Afterward, my mother's oatmeal lace cookies. After a chapter like this one, I could not possibly leave you with poisoned cookies. So here, restored to its rightful place, is my mother's oatmeal lace cookie recipe. known in the family as crunchies for the cooking impaired. No dragonsbane, no goblin curses, no treasonous royal interference, just oats, brown sugar, butter, and the kind of instructions that know exactly who they're talking to, in my mother's own words. Oatmeal lace cookie crunchies for the cooking impaired. Warm up the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then mix together 2.5 cups of quick rolled oats, uncooked, straight out of the box, formerly used to make oatmeal the old-fashioned way before there was instant oatmeal. No brand names, please. Just the cheap, tawdry stuff, because what you're about to do to these flakes is mix them up until they yell, "Hallelujah!" 2 cups of loose brown sugar or 1 cup brown sugar firmly packed. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Stir up real good before you stir in 1 stick of real butter melted. No, do not use margarine, vegetable oil, or any other substitutes for the real thing. 1 whole stick of real butter, also known as 1/2 cup melted butter. Should be very crumbly. Keep stirring until all the little rolled oats are sort of moistened. And then stir in 1 egg. And if you want and or are addicted to chocolate or candy bars, throw in a small handful of chocolate chips, raisins, cinnamon chips, chopped up Butterfingers, Snickers, Dove bars, or whatever, as long as it is sweet and not savory. We know this because Mom tried, potato chips and other things, and it just didn't work as well. But the Butterfingers were really good. Now everything should be kind of gooey and stuck together in a loose kind of way. Then line a cookie sheet with aluminum foil and spray with oil. Drop teaspoons of cookie dough here and there on the aluminum foil with lots of room, because these cookies spread like a rumor about the minister and the youth director at the church social. Bake for 13 minutes if you want them crunchy. This is the best way. Bake them for 10 minutes if you want them chewy because you can't find where you left your teeth. Bake for 15 minutes if you like them just a tad burned and super crunchy. My favorite way. It's true, it was our mom's favorite way. Or don't bake them at all. Just eat the cookie dough raw because it tastes great and you're in dire need of a delicious laxative now. Enjoy! Next time on Those Damn Brownies. The party leaves Yontiff's cave with a recipe card, a marked token, and a truth too heavy to carry politely. The next story leads to the court, where records have been altered, memories have been stolen, and royal paperwork has been doing the devil's own tap dance in goblin shoes. Snooker and Weewee may be small, but they know a bad legal document when they smell one, and King Snuffleglump, who built a kingdom out of forgetting, is about to discover that some families come home with witnesses, crumbs, and a dachshund who knows exactly where justice is hiding. You've been listening to Those Damn Brownies by Glory Fink. If this episode made you gasp, tear up, crave cookies, distrust goblin paperwork, or feel personally protective of a dragon mother you just met, you can help this story keep finding its people by tapping the heart button. Engagement is magic. Leave a comment. Would you trust Yontiff's recipe card, Biscuit's nose, or Weewee's moral clarity first? You can become a financial booster. Paid subs and tips directly fund our writing time, audio production, and whatever fresh nonsense the fair folk approve of next. Or you become a paid subscriber to Glorious Magazine on Substack, or you can even toss a few coins in the coffee fund through Ko-fi, Venmo, or Cash App. You can read Those Damn Brownies for free at Glorious Magazine, and find more community goodness at Coffee Bunny Crafters Cafe on Substack. And you can find me, Glory Fink, as at Glory Writes the Blues on Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, TikTok, and Threads. Until next time, keep your cookies unpoisoned, your memories suspicious, your tiny friends properly welcomed, and your dachshund close enough to identify the plot before it bites. Thanks for listening, and I'll see y'all in Chapter 13. Goodbye!